In this video, we're going to add some visual cue to our selection. So within our shop system here, if we open up the shop panel, we have this selection button. And what we'd like to do here is determine if we select the flame sword or the boots of flight, we can then underline it with the selection UI. So to get started with that, we first need to add a UI image for the selection. So right click your shop, go to UI, select image, and let's add the selection image to the source. Once you've done that, you can select, we can widen the width. Go ahead and make it about 300, maybe about 450. And then by the height, make it about 50, maybe 30. So once we have that, let's go ahead and rename this to selection. And essentially what we want to do here is we are going to, through the UI manager, we're going to be repositioning this based on whichever UI element you select. So here we have our flame sword, we have our boots of flight, and then we have our keys to the castle. So whichever one you select, we're going to highlight it under there. So now the question comes down to, how do we know what we selected? So we have those UI buttons, and those buttons are going to communicate with the script, our shop script, which is then going to communicate with our UI to update it. It's going to say shop selected, and then the buy item button is going to be what's going to finalize the sale. So to do this, our UI manager needs to be responsible for updating the position of this. So let's go ahead and give it a reference to this image so that it can change the transform. So let's go ahead and go into our UI manager. And let's create an image component for that. So here we have public image, and this is going to be for our selection slider. So selection, we'll call it selection image. Once you've done that, go back into Unity, select the UI canvas, which has our UI manager script on it. And now we have a selection image that we can drag. So let's drag that into there. Let's save this. And what we want to do now is when we click one of these buttons, we need to get feedback knowing which one we selected. To do that, we're going to create functionality within our shop here. So here we have, let's create a method that says public void select item. Now when that method is called, we're going to know which item we selected. So how does this function get called? Well, if we look on our actual UI buttons, they have an event that we can add that says, hey, go ahead and call that method when this happens. So if you look here on the merchant or on our buttons, go into item BG, and if we look at our buttons here, each one has an OnClick event. So if we select all of them at once and add an OnClick event, the object that has our OnClick event is our shopkeeper. So we're going to add the shopkeeper to there. And then from there, we're going to add a function called shopScript, and we want to call our select item. Now with our select item, every time we click a button, it's going to call that method. If we save this, head back into our shop system and add a debug.log, we can know when an item was selected. So here, select item. Let's go ahead and save this. Once we get this working, we can then look at how we can determine which item was selected based on what button was selected by adding in a parameter. So let's go ahead and run the game. All right, so let's run into the shop. Here we go. Right now we have 0 gems, but if I hit flame sword, you'll see here that it says we hit the shopkeeper, but also, okay, so it's not detecting that we actually click any of these UI elements. Now, the reason for this is because it's actually a child element of our item BG, and I believe it's detecting that we're clicking the item background, not these individual buttons. So to easily fix this, we have two options. We can figure out how to make it work with the children, or we can actually take these objects and not have them as a child of the item BG. Now, real quickly, one thing that we might be able to do is if we remove raycast target and make sure that's set to false. This may allow us to raycast through that image and get the children. Let's save our scene. and test it out. Let's go ahead and turn off the shop panel. Because essentially what's happening, there's some wall behind our buttons basically. So now if I hit flame sword, it looks like it's still not registering it. So one quick thing that we can do then is we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to open up our shop panel here. We're going to take these 3 buttons. We're going to position them outside of the background and put them in front of it, like so. Once we've done that, we just need to simply reposition these guys. So for this, go ahead and set the width to about 1000 and then set the height to 100. And from there, we can select each individual one and just drag it up. And then here for the boots of flight, do the same thing, drag it up. And keys to the castle. All right, once we have that, let's go ahead and take a look at our selection here. And let's also just decrease this a bit, maybe about 15, maybe even 10. Just so we can get an idea of which one we have selected. Okay, let's save this. If we head back into Unity, it should now detect the collision of these guys. So now when I hit flame sword, it does. You'll see here that the select method is called when I click these. So here we have a select item, and let's go ahead and disable some of these other logs. So like the grounded log, disable that. Let's go ahead and also disable the spider should fire log. Go ahead and stop playing Unity while we do that. So spider should fire. And what we want to do here is we want to make sure that each of our items is calling that select item method. And once we verify that, what we can then do is we can actually pass in a parameter with that selection to know through code, hey, you selected flame sword or boots of flight or keys to the castle. So if I select flame sword, selected item. If I select boots of flight, we should also see selected item. And if I do keys to the castle. So that's 3 clicks and 3 printouts. All right, so that's working great. What we can do now is we can determine which one we clicked, and based on that logic, we can then tell the UI manager to update the selection. So I'll see you guys in the next video where we'll work that out.